Hello friends, welcome back. First of all, tell me where in the world you're watching my video from. I didn't know at the time, but the first warning came disguised as pride. The kind of pride that swells your chest when you watch your child become someone formidable, someone independent, someone who no longer needs you in the way they once did, but still chooses to keep you close. My daughter, Emma, had built something real, not inherited, not handed down, built. 7 years of late nights, rejected proposals, quiet resilience. By 32, she had taken a small marketing consultancy and turned it into a company investors finally took seriously. When she told me she'd secured venture capital to expand into a full-service agency, I remember standing in my kitchen long after the call ended, staring at the wall, smiling like an idiot. This was the reward of parenthood no one talks about. The moment when your job is done well enough that your presence becomes optional. I was 62, retired from corporate law, living quietly in Portland. Her mother and I had divorced years earlier without war or bitterness. We both stayed present. We both stayed proud. Emma had grown up surrounded by stability, honesty, and the kind of cautious optimism that comes from watching adults handle life without theatrics. Which is why what came next unsettled me so deeply. His name, he said, was Tyler Harrington. Emma met him at a tech networking event in March. She told the story casually, the way people do when they don't yet realize a moment will matter. He was charming, confident, a serial entrepreneur who'd sold 2 startups and was looking for his next challenge. The words slid easily off her tongue, already familiar. Within a month, they were dating. Within 2 months, he'd moved into her downtown loft. When she told me that part, something inside me hesitated. Not alarm, not fear. Just a pause. The mental equivalent of a foot hovering above a brake pedal. I told myself it was nothing. She was an adult. Successful. Smart. Not impulsive. And I was a father who'd spent 3 decades listening to lies for a living. It was only natural I'd be overly sensitive. I met him in April at Emma's birthday dinner. He stood when I entered the restaurant. Firm handshake. Direct eye contact. The kind of confidence that announces itself without asking permission. He spoke warmly about Emma's work, her intelligence, her ambition. He praised her in ways that sounded thoughtful, but not intimate, as if he'd memorized the outline of who she was, not the texture. Throughout dinner, he told stories, polished ones, about exits and acquisitions and boardrooms and strategic pivots. Every sentence landed cleanly, too cleanly. When I asked specifics, names, timelines, technical decisions, he didn't stumble. He pivoted, gracefully, redirected the narrative without answering the question. It was impressive and deeply familiar. I'd spent 30 years across conference tables for men like that. People who never lied outright, but never allowed truth to corner them either. Still, I said nothing. When Emma laughed and told me to stop interrogating her boyfriend at her birthday dinner, I smiled and backed off. I told myself instincts weren't evidence. That suspicion without proof was just ego wearing a badge. By June, Tyler was no longer just Emma's boyfriend. He was helping with strategy. That was how she phrased it when I raised an eyebrow. Helping, advising, offering perspective. He had experience scaling companies, she said. Experience she didn't. I reminded myself that collaboration wasn't corruption. That smart people seek counsel. That love didn't automatically blind you. But the pattern accelerated. He started attending investor meetings, sitting beside her, speaking when she paused. He suggested restructuring cash flow to optimize runway. He convinced her to add him as a signatory on the business accounts, just temporary, just practical. He introduced her to a lawyer friend who could streamline partnership paperwork. Each step alone meant nothing. Together, they formed a shape I recognized too well. I asked her to meet me for coffee in early July. She arrived tired but glowing, dressed like someone carrying momentum. I chose my words carefully. I always had. I told her mixing business and romance was complicated. I suggested she have any documents reviewed independently. Not because she wasn't capable, because capability didn't protect you from complexity. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse me. She cut me off. Firmly. Cleanly. She told me she wasn't stupid. That she knew what she was doing. That Tyler believed in her. That he was helping her achieve goals she'd chased for years. Then came the sentence that stung more than I expected. Why can't you just be happy for me? I remember sitting there, watching her stir her coffee, realizing something subtle but significant had shifted. It wasn't anger. It was distance. Tyler didn't need to argue with me. He didn't need to confront me. He simply needed me framed as an obstacle. By August, the launch party loomed. August 15th, a downtown gallery. Investors, clients, employees. A celebration of legitimacy. She named the company Carson and Associates. When she told me that, her voice softened. She said she wanted to honor how I'd supported her, how I believed in her when she was still pitching herself to empty rooms. That night, alone in my living room, I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it almost drowned out the unease. Almost. 3 days before the party, Tyler called me. His tone was warm, professional, controlled. He said we needed to meet. We sat across from each other in a quiet coffee shop near my house. He brought documents, bank statements, ledgers, transfer records. He laid them out slowly, deliberately, like someone easing into bad news. He said there were irregularities. He said Emma had asked him to look. He said $50,000 was missing. He said the transfers led to my account. As he spoke, I watched his face. Concerned, reluctant, practiced, and suddenly, the unease I'd been carrying for months crystallized into certainty. This wasn't confusion. This was design. I didn't feel panic or anger. I felt recognition, the way you do when a puzzle finally reveals its image, and you realize it's been forming in front of you all along. I knew then that Tyler Harrington wasn't just lying. He was setting a stage, and my daughter was standing dead center, unaware the floor beneath her was about to give way. As he spoke about discretion, about protecting Emma, about keeping things in the family, I realized something else. This wasn't about money. It was about removal, about isolating her from the last person who might interfere. And as I looked at the man across from me, his calm, his control, his absolute certainty that I'd fold, I understood the truth that chilled me most. This wasn't his first time, and unless I moved carefully, it wouldn't be his last. When you spend enough years studying deception, you learn something unsettling. The most dangerous lies aren't shouted. They're delivered gently, with empathy, with solutions already prepared for your consent. Tyler watched me carefully as the silence stretched between us. He didn't rush. He let the accusation settle, let the weight of it press against my chest, as if gravity itself might do the work for him. I looked down at the papers again. Account numbers, dates, amounts. My name typed neatly beside authorization codes that were supposed to be mine. Fabricated, clean, convincing. He told me Emma had added me as a secondary signatory in March, that she'd wanted me there just in case. He said it with a softness meant to sound loving, not strategic. Then came the pause, the one that wasn't accidental. I haven't told her yet, he said quietly. I wanted to give you the chance to explain. There it was, the hook disguised as mercy. Any other man might have protested loudly, might have demanded lawyers, or called his daughter immediately. That was what Tyler was counting on. Emotion, rashness, noise. I stayed calm. I told him I had never authorized any transfers, that I had no access to her accounts, that if money had moved, it wasn't by my hand. He nodded slowly, like someone listening to a child deny a broken vase. The transfers came from your authorization code, he said. Look, Richard, I don't want to believe you do this, but the evidence is clear. Then he leaned forward. We can handle this quietly. That was when the room seemed to tilt. He wasn't asking for the money back. He wasn't threatening police. He was offering silence in exchange for submission. He outlined it calmly. I would return the money that didn't exist. We would restructure access, remove my name, clean the slate. Emma would never need to know her father had struggled. He chose his words carefully. Emma forgives weakness, he said. She won't forgive betrayal. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. This was extortion dressed as compassion. I asked to see my actual bank statements, not as copies, not as evidence. I told him I called my bank right there. For the first time, his expression flickered, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Richard, he said, his voice tightening, if you make this difficult, I'll have no choice but to involve Emma. From what? I asked. From the truth, he said. He told me the party was in 3 days. Then he delivered the final piece of the trap. He was proposing to Emma that night, publicly, in front of investors, colleagues, everyone whose opinion mattered to her future. He stood, adjusting his jacket. You have until then, he said. Figure out how you want to explain this. Financial problems. Gambling. Something that makes you look weak, not criminal. Weakness could be forgiven. Criminality could not. And then he left me sitting there with a stack of lies and a deadline. I didn't move for a long time. I understood exactly what he planned to do. If I stayed silent, he'd propose, lock himself in her life permanently, and slowly drain her world from the inside. If I fought him publicly, he'd accuse me in front of everyone she respected, paint himself as her savior, me as her betrayer. Either way, he won, unless I proved who he really was. I called my bank first. My accounts were clean. No transfers. No anomalies. Then I called Emma's bank, careful, methodical. I asked about authorization codes. They confirmed what I already knew. No activity had ever been initiated under mine. Tyler had fabricated everything. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I returned to the version of myself I'd left behind when I retired, the one who knew where to look when something smelled wrong. I pulled records, ran searches, dug through databases that most people never touch. I called in a favor from an old colleague, now working in federal financial crimes. What came back made my hands shake. Tyler Harrington didn't exist before 5 years ago. No childhood, no early employment, no messy trail of youthful mistakes. His identity appeared fully formed: credit history, social security number, business registrations. Too perfect. Professional identity theft. Purchased. Assembled. His real name was Marcus Webb, 41 years old, wanted in 3 states. Fraud. Identity theft. Racketeering. His pattern unfolded like a blueprint. He targeted successful single women, entrepreneurs, executives. He moved fast. Romance first. Trust next. Financial access soon after. Sometimes he drained accounts quickly. Other times, he played a longer game, using businesses as fronts, laundering money, positioning himself for maximum extraction. He wasn't alone. He had networks, shell companies, fake lawyers. Emma wasn't his first. She was his 8th. The FBI had been tracking him for 2 years, but couldn't pin down his current identity. They knew he'd moved to the Pacific Northwest. They didn't know he was living in my daughter's home. I had 3 days. 3 days before he either proposed to Emma or destroyed her faith in me beyond repair. I couldn't warn her. Not yet. He'd already isolated her from my concerns. If I accused him without proof, she'd defend him. Worse, she might alert him. He'd vanish, and Emma would be left picking through the wreckage alone. So I chose the only path left. Exposure. Public. Documented. Irreversible. The morning of the party, I met with FBI agents in a quiet office. We planned carefully. Undercover attendants. Recording devices. Clear lines. If he incriminated himself, they'd move in. If not, they'd still track him, but he might slip away again. When I arrived at the gallery that evening, wearing a concealed recorder beneath my jacket, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. The space was beautiful. Emma had poured herself into it. Branding, displays, lighting, proof of her vision everywhere I looked. She hugged me, smiling, unaware this might be the last moment of innocence she'd have for a long time. She told me Tyler had a surprise announcement. She thought it was business. I swallowed the truth and told her I was proud of her. Because sometimes love means waiting until the truth can survive the moment it's revealed. As guests arrived and laughter filled the room, I watched Tyler move effortlessly through the crowd. Confident, admired, untouchable. And I wonder how many women had watched him like that before everything they trusted burned down. When he finally approached me, smiling, calm, I knew the performance was almost over. But I also knew something else. For the first time since this began, he wasn't the only one holding a weapon. And when the lights dimmed and the room filled completely, I realized how close we were to the edge. One sentence, one misstep, one truth spoken too soon or too late. Everything balanced on what would happen next. There's a particular sound a room makes just before everything collapses. It isn't loud. It isn't sudden. It's the quiet tightening of air, the subtle shift when people stop moving freely and begin orienting themselves to a moment they don't yet understand. The gallery was full now. Investors clustered near the front, glasses raised, voices overlapping in polished excitement. Emma stood radiant beneath the lights, laughing with a client, completely unaware that the foundation beneath her feet had been hollowed out months ago. Tyler moved through the crowd like he owned the space. He had that ease, shoulders loose, smile calibrated, hands resting just long enough on arms and backs to signal familiarity without intimacy. I watched people lean toward him when he spoke. Watched heads nod. Watched trust being granted in real time. About an hour into the evening, he found me. "Richard," he said warmly, as if the past 3 days hadn't happened. "Can I borrow you for a moment?" We stepped toward a quieter corner, just far enough from the crowd to feel private without being hidden. My recording device was already active. I felt its small, steady weight against my ribs like a second heartbeat. "I wanted to give you one last chance," he said softly. His eyes flicked briefly toward Emma, then back to me. "She's about to introduce me to the board chairman. After that, I'm making my announcement." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "If you cause a scene tonight, if you interfere in any way, I will destroy you in front of everyone here. No anger, no threat, just certainty. I have the statements," he continued. "I have the records. I have a lawyer prepared to file charges. Your daughter will believe you stole from her." I let a beat pass. "Why?" I asked. The word hung between us. Why Emma? Why this elaborate cruelty? Why the effort? For the first time since I'd known him, Tyler smiled without performance. A real smile. Cold. Satisfied. "Because women like Emma are easy," he said. "Ambitious. Driven. They want to believe someone sees them, supports them. I give them that. And they give me everything else." He chuckled quietly. "California. Texas. Arizona. Same story every time." The names landed between us like dropped glass. His smile froze. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly. "Oh, you do?" I replied. "Marcus." His pupils contracted. "Or should I call you Ethan?" I continued. "Ryan? Jason? How many are you using right now?" For the first time, his composure cracked. Not fully, but enough for me to see what lived underneath. Calculation. Fear. Rage held on a leash. "You're desperate," he said. "Making things up because you can't accept that Emma chose me over you." I met his gaze. "I have your real identity, your criminal record, and I have FBI agents in this room right now." I pulled out my phone. "And I have evidence from your other victims, including the woman in Texas who's been looking for you for 2 years. For a fraction of a second, the world seemed to stop. Then Tyler lunged. He reached for my phone with sudden violence, knocking a glass from a nearby table. It shattered against the floor, the sound sharp enough to cut through the room. I stepped back, and the room went silent. Agent Sarah Chan appeared beside us, as if summoned by the noise itself. Her badge was already out. "Marcus Webb," she said clearly. "FBI. You're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering." Time fractured. People turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Emma's voice stopped at the front of the room. 2 more agents emerged from the crowd, moving fast, efficient, practiced. They grabbed Tyler's arms as he struggled, his charm evaporating into raw panic. "This is a setup," he shouted. "He's framing me. He stole from his own daughter, and now he's lying to cover it." His voice echoed off the gallery walls. "Richard," he yelled, twisting toward me. Tell them you did it." Agent Chin held up a tablet. On it was a mugshot. Different hair, different name, same face. "Your real name is Marcus Webb," she said. "You're wanted in 3 states. We've been tracking you for 2 years." She turned the screen toward Emma. "I'm sorry," she said gently, "but the man you know as Tyler Harrington is a con artist." Emma hadn't moved. She stood frozen, hands at her sides, eyes fixed on the screen as Agent Chin scrolled. Images appeared, Marcus with different women, different cities, different lives, engagement photos, wedding announcements, smiling faces that didn't yet know how much they were about to lose. Emma's hand rose to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. Tyler thrashed, his voice breaking into pleading now. "Emma, baby, don't listen to them. Your father paid them. He's always been jealous. Tell them it's not true." But she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at the evidence, at the pattern, at the truth. Agent Chin approached her slowly. "Miss Carson," she said, "we need to talk about your business accounts. Has he had access?" Emma nodded, tears spilling freely now. "He's a signatory," she said. "He helped with the expansion. He introduced me to a lawyer. I signed partnership papers last week. Agent Chin's expression tightened. We'll need to see those documents. There's a strong chance they're fraudulent. The agents led Tyler away, still shouting, still trying to control the narrative even as the handcuffs clicked closed. The gallery remained silent long after he was gone. Investors stood in clusters, stunned. Employees whispered. Emma's launch night, her dream, lay in ruins at her feet. I approached her slowly. She didn't look at me at first. You knew, she said flatly. How long? 3 days, I replied. Since he showed me the fake statements. Why didn't you tell me? The question cut deep. Would you have believed me? She was quiet for a long time. Then she shook her head. No, she said. I would have thought you were trying to sabotage us. Her voice broke. He told me that, she added, that you were jealous, that you didn't want me to succeed. She laughed weakly through tears. I gave him everything. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to shield her from the weight crashing down on her all at once. But there are moments when comfort has to wait for truth to settle. You're not stupid, I said softly. You're human. He's done this before. He knew exactly what to say. Around us, the party dissolved. Guests drifted out quietly. Some offered words of support. Others simply nodded with new respect. By midnight, the gallery was empty. Emma and I sat on a bench near the entrance, the same place where hours earlier she'd greeted guests with hope in her eyes. I ignored you, she said quietly. I chose him over you. I put an arm around her shoulders. You didn't choose him, I said. You chose the version of the world he showed you. She leaned into me, exhausted. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware of what had just ended inside those walls. Inside me, one thought echoed louder than the rest. The worst night of her life was over. But the aftermath, the reckoning, the rebuilding, was just beginning. And the question hung between us, unspoken but heavy. After everything that had shattered tonight, could trust ever feel safe again? The room felt larger once everyone was gone. Not emptier, larger. As if the walls had pulled back, embarrassed by what they had witnessed, leaving Emma and me exposed inside the echo of what should have been celebration. The lights were still on, too bright now, illuminating every discarded napkin, every half-empty glass. Evidence of joy interrupted. Emma sat rigid beside me on the bench, staring at nothing. Shock doesn't announce itself with drama. It arrives quietly, like a system powering down to avoid overload. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled faintly in her lap. Agent Chun approached us with the kind of gentleness only practiced professionals possess, the tone of someone who knows exactly how much damage has already been done. She explained what would happen next. Accounts frozen, documents reviewed, statements taken, not as accusations, but as protection. This isn't your fault, she told Emma, meeting her eyes directly. Marcus Webb is extremely skilled. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Victim number 8. The phrase settled heavily between us. Emma nodded, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand like a child who hadn't yet learned there were better ways to hold grief. What happens to my business? She asked. That question, more than the tears, more than the shock, told me she was still herself, still standing, still thinking forward. Agent Chin explained carefully. The partnership papers were likely worthless. The lawyer Tyler had used wasn't licensed in Oregon. The accounts showed no major drains yet. He'd been preparing, not extracting. He was playing the long game. Emma had caught him before the final move. By the time the agents left, the gallery was silent again. Just us, father and daughter. 2 people sitting in the wreckage of a night that had rewritten everything. I owe you an apology, Emma said eventually. Her voice was hoarse, scraped raw by the truth. For how I treated you. For not listening. You don't owe me anything, I said. I'm just glad you're safe. She turned to look at me then. Really look. Not as a parent, not as a skeptic, but as someone who had stood between her and something monstrous. How did you know? She asked. When did you know he wasn't real? I thought back to that first dinner. The smooth answers. The empty specifics. The way his eyes never softened when he looked at her. He never looked at you like someone in love, I said. He looked at you like an asset. The word hurt to say. It hurt her more to hear. She cried then. Not quietly, not gracefully. The kind of crying that empties you out, that carries shame and grief and self-blame all at once. I held her the way I had when she was small, when the world felt unfair and inexplicable. Over the next 2 weeks, the truth expanded. The FBI uncovered everything Marcus Webb had tried to bury. Fake identities layered like costumes. Shell companies. Victims scattered across states, some still rebuilding, some only just realizing what had been done to them. Emma's business had been inches from becoming a laundering front. The partnership documents would have handed him majority ownership. The fake embezzlement evidence against me had been insurance, his escape route. He hadn't taken money yet because he hadn't finished positioning himself. That knowledge haunted Emma. It could have gone on longer, deeper, worse. She testified at his trial in November. I sat behind her in the courtroom as she faced him again. No longer charming, no longer in control. Just a man stripped of masks, watching the consequences close in. 5 other women testified. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. When the gavel came down, Emma didn't smile. She exhaled. That was all. Her business survived. More than that, it grew. Investors respected how she handled the crisis. Clients admired her transparency. Her story became a cautionary tale that drew the right kind of attention. She hired security specialists, built safeguards, learned to separate affection from access. She never again mixed business and romance. Our relationship healed too, but not by returning to what it was. It became something better. We had dinner every Sunday. She asked my opinion on decisions, not because she needed permission, but because she trusted perspective again. She listened, and I learned to speak carefully, without fear of being dismissed or resented. A year later, she held another celebration in the same gallery. This time, it was to announce that Carson and Associates had been named one of Portland's fastest-growing companies. When she thanked her team and her investors, the applause was polite. When she thanked me, it was something else. She said I'd taught her that real support isn't always comfortable, that sometimes love asks hard questions and refuses easy silence. She said I'd save her business, and probably her life. I felt tears sting my eyes. Later that night, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a new signature card. My name. I want you back as a secondary signatory, she said. Not because I need approval. Because I trust you. I nodded. Next time I get that off feeling, she added softly, I promise I'll listen. Marcus Webb wrote her letters from prison for a while. She burned them unopened. Some people never stop trying to control the story. Emma learned to stop listening. The gallery is her company's main office now. She bought the building, renovated it, kept the bench where we sat that night. Sometimes I visit during the day and sit there quietly, watching her lead meetings, build something honest and strong. She caught me there once. Why do you like that bench so much? She asked. It reminds me, I said, of the worst night that led to better days. She sat beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. Me too, Dad. And in that moment, quiet, ordinary, real, I knew something Tyler Harrington, Marcus Webb, or any other name he wore could never take. He didn't take my daughter. He didn't take her future. And he didn't win.